Okay, so this is going to be a fairly short video. It's just a clip for, a friend of mine who wants to develop his higher notes a bit better. So, to sum up my outlook and my opinion, it's basically that if you're trying to develop high notes, you need to isolate the coordinations that allow high notes to happen. Which, most people, and we all do it to one degree or another as singers, especially live in the room when you're gigging and you're trying to compete with blaring rock guitars and heavy drums and especially drum cymbals, we'll all tend to push more and lean on slightly more inefficient coordinations because it gives the immediate feeling of more stability. Now the problem with that is that you very quickly hit a brick wall when you start to move into ranges where certain things are a bit weak or undeveloped, and that's made worse by the fact that you're pushing harder because you're just blowing more air in an inefficient coordination. So the way around this that I find, and it's why my high notes tend to work so well, it's why my comfy range in a live gig setting is high C and above, is because I've really took the time to develop those higher coordinations. My history with things is that to get my high notes to work, I had to stop working the lower notes because I was so imbalanced. I just had to give up work on it for ages as well. I just worked falsetto and gradually, very gradually built on songs that use slightly heavier coordinations, and eventually that started to trickle down through the lower ranges as my fundamental vocal coordinations become more top heavy. That's why my high notes work so decently, and so that's my advice to anyone who's looking to develop their higher notes, is isolate those things by working really quietly with really narrow vowels and try to get notes around the range you're at. So in your example, you hit a bit of a brick wall around E5. That's where you're really pushing. It can be touch and go whether you get the note. So what I would do if I find an E5, it's about, and forgive me, I've just woken up so my voice is dehydrated and all that, but yeah, so it's about that note. So if you find you're hitting a brick wall there, the key thing to do is really take some time when you're in a quiet setting. You won't be able to do this in a practice or live in the room, not until you've got some strength there so that it feels stable and it's practiced enough that you automatically do it. But when you're doing singing practice outside of that situation, when you're doing it quietly at home, you want to go really, really quiet and really try to isolate those coordinations that feel free and easy. The lightest, smallest coordination you can get, and if I demo it now, because I've got my microphone, I've got my headphones on, I can really hear it. I'm getting close and I can hear the airflow just starting to breathe life into those notes. So if I demonstrate now, you'll probably hear all kinds of pops and squeaks around that pitch. So if I give it a quick go. Now I'm trying to get an E5 at minuscule volume, but do you hear how those higher notes are starting to kick on and gradually open up? That's a good thing, because the worst thing you want to happen is, okay, you're trying to get an E5, so you're going and pushing. That's quite a heavy coordination, even though it's in falsetto, which is fine. That'll give you the feeling that you're hitting the note, but it'll also develop inefficient coordinations that will limit you from making it easier. And especially if you want to start climbing up more towards G5 or A5, that's really going to make it feel like you're hitting a brick wall. You're going to push and you're going to blow air, and if you're lucky, nothing will come out. You won't, you'll break, you'll crack, but it'll hurt. It won't sound good, and it'll hurt, and it won't do anything to, over the long term, develop those notes better. So my advice is really take the time with a narrow vowel. You can use oo or e, preferably oo. It's got a bit less chest weight to it. It forces you to narrow down and isolate things. And yeah, just do exactly what I'm doing now, ideally with a microphone and headphones, so that you can really isolate that coordination and really give it a go. Try to get that E5, and if you pop and end up higher, great. Sit on those notes, wiggle around with them, see what happens, and just try to develop those coordinations and gradually bring it down. So I'll demonstrate if I was just messing around practicing, trying to get those notes. So you hear I've shot about an octave over it. I'm up at about an E6 there. It's easy, it's free, it takes a certain amount of engagement, because high notes do, even at a minuscule volume, but it's really free and easy, and the more I isolate that and work on developing that and powering that coordination and bringing that down, the easier and easier the notes underneath it will become. And you can hear it when I'm doing it. I'll demonstrate it again. you hear all those little cracks and scrapes. That's where the lower coordinations are trying to kick on, because I'm so naturally more dominant with those. They're trying to take, it's hard to describe, it depends what terminology you use, but they're trying to take the weight there. They're trying to kick on and do the job, but it's that high, they can't hope to do it. So you're getting disconnects there where the vocal cords don't really know whether they're pushing or pulling or what to do. And again, the key is really isolate that higher coordination and keep working on it and trying to bring it down. So again, if I'm practicing it for a few minutes, I'll do... Now you hear I've managed to get down to an E5 at the bottom there. It's a very different sound and coordination. Don't get me wrong, it's weak, it's breathy, it's not usable in a song. But it's a very different coordination than going, yeah, into that kind of gear. Very different. You know, like I say, it's not musical. But that is what will really isolate those coordinations that will allow you to build high notes. So keep working on those. Do it quietly, again, ideally with headphones and a mic, because then you can really go quietly. You can turn the gain up on the mic and really go tiny and minuscule, and you'll hear those little blips, those little higher notes switching on, and that's what you want to wiggle about with and open up. And it works great, and it will develop power eventually, and sooner or later, if you keep working on it and strengthening it, it will begin to trickle down to that E5 range. You'll feel more release, the notes will become more consistent, and it'll become eventually effortless to do, or close to effortless. It always takes a certain amount of pressure to get those high notes. But yeah, that's pretty much my approach. Start with those narrow vowels. As you start to get stronger at it, broaden out the vowels, you know, to a E or a R. You know, you've got to be careful what vowel choices you use depending on the range you're in. But if you're just trying to open up that E5 to A5 kind of range, working on this stuff will do brilliantly at that. Bring it down to those notes, and eventually it'll start to translate into more powerful sounds. You'll be able to put more pressure on it, and it'll work great. And it really does come from just trying to make little pops and squeaks with the slightest air pressure. You don't want to push, you don't want to just blow air. Again, it's a very different feeling than going, Woo! It's minuscule, it's tiny, it's... Again, just woke up. It's dehydrated. It's a struggle to get those to come out with that coordination, but it makes the point. I'm not brilliant at it either. It's a constant work in progress, but the more you work at it, the better it gets, and it'll open your range up there. It really will. So yeah, sit down, take the time to work on that. Keep trying it, because it will take time, especially to begin with, just trying to get it to open up. You'll be so tempted to push and to try to blow air at it, and it doesn't really work that way. If you're just compressing the air, just even without making a note, just... Eventually you'll figure it out. And again, try it with headphones and a mic if you can. It'll help. And keep practicing, and eventually it opens up. You get more control, you become more versatile with it. Yeah, it works really well. It becomes loud and easy to do, eventually. So anyway, I hope that about summed it up. Good luck with it, mate. Feel free to ask me any questions. Catch you later.